My name is Edna Coate, and I'm 22. There's a particular kind of silence you only hear in crowded rooms, the kind where 1,000 people are clapping, and somehow none of them are clapping for you. I stood in my cap and gown under the auditorium lights, the tassel tickling my cheek, and stared across rows of faces, hand-painted signs, balloons with curling ribbon, moms who couldn't stop smiling, dads who pretended not to wipe their eyes. A grandmother pressed a wrinkled hand to her chest as her grandson's name echoed off the rafters and broke into happy pieces. My row stood. I rose with them. I told myself to breathe. Third of 4 kids, the in-between. The one who tightens loose cabinet screws while everyone else sings happy birthday. The one who fixes the Wi-Fi and then steps out of frame when the family takes the picture. Architecture major, cold pizza minor, full ride, tuition, books, housing, earned between dollar store ramen and blueprints smudged with graphite and coffee. I had promised myself I wouldn't look for my family in the crowd. I already knew what I'd find. Nothing. The night before, I'd reminded them in our group chat anyway. Edna, graduation is Saturday at 2 p.m. I'm giving a short speech. Would love to see you there. Hours later, a reply. Not from Mom, not from Dad. Megan, a degree doesn't make you special. Paper burns. Then a laughing emoji. Then silence. Until morning, when Dad added the confetti. Dad, hope you didn't waste money on a fancy outfit. Just get a job. I almost laughed. My dress was thrifted. My heels were borrowed. The only thing expensive about me was the hours I had stacked into something solid enough to stand on without anyone's hands beneath it. The line shuffled. The dean shook hands. Photo flashes popped like tiny fireworks. When my name called, a polite wave of applause rose, warm but aimless. I shook the dean's hand. I took the diploma. I smiled for a camera that didn't belong to me. It felt less like victory and more like breathing above water for a full minute without anyone noticing. I'd been asked to say a few words. Short and sweet, the dean said, because my GPA and my internship hours looked good on brochures. I stepped to the podium. People say college is where you find yourself. Sometimes it's where you build yourself, I said, voice steady. Piece by piece, out of pressure, deadlines, coupon apps, and a lot of nights you think no one will ever clap for. Soft laughter. A couple of nods that tasted like yes. Some of us had cheerleaders. Some of us had silence. If you're here, you built something, and no one gets to take that away, not even silence. When it was over, the magnets began. Students to families, families to students, orbit finding itself. I found my phone. No congratulations. No, can't wait to hug you. Just a blinking cursor in a chat named Fam Bam that had never earned either heart. I should have felt angry, but anger requires expectation. What I felt was clarity so clean it almost stung. I scrolled to a photo I'd taken 2 days earlier. Me, in paint-splattered jeans, standing in front of a small house with fresh trim and a stubborn lawn. The sold sign still staked into the soft spring dirt. In my left hand, a ring of keys. In my right, a copy of a title packet with my name on it. No cosigners. No, we pitched in. No miracle. Just spreadsheets, weekend shifts, freelance drafting gigs that paid in small deposits and big sleep debt. Caption, no one had to care. I did anyway. I dropped it into the group chat and hit send. The first typing bubble belonged to my mother. It appeared, vanished, reappeared, like she was negotiating a peace treaty with her own reflection. Mom, why would you post something like that, Edna? Not congratulations. Not, I'm sorry we missed your speech. Why would I post ownership? Megan, wow. Flexing a mortgage at 22 is desperate. Banks love girls like you. Puppet strings look cute in cap and gown. Dad, no one likes a show-off. Remember your roots, young lady. My roots. The secondhand calculators, the cracked TI-83 screen, the overtime shifts where I studied 3D massing in a break room that smelled like bleach and pretzels, the nights I traced facades with a dull pencil because I couldn't afford new leads until Friday. Those roots? I locked my phone, not to be dramatic, to be free for 10 minutes. Nice speech, a classmate murmured, passing. Felt true. Thanks, I said, surprised that the word felt like warm tea in my chest. Outside, the air was too bright. Confetti had fallen into the cracks of the walkway and sparkled like tiny, stubborn stars. I walked to my car, slid into the driver's seat, and let my forehead rest against the steering wheel. Not to cry, to be very, very awake. A text lit the screen. Ethan, my boyfriend. Proud of you. Wish my shift wasn't double today. Dinner tomorrow? I'll bring the celebratory takeout and pretend it's champagne. I smiled. Ethan didn't fix my problems. He just noticed I existed without asking me to earn it. Novel. By the time I reached the tiny apartment I'd outgrown, the family chat had advanced through the stages of grief. Mockery, revisionist history, guilt coupons. Sean. Mom said you didn't want attention. That's why we didn't go. Megan. You've always acted superior because you read blueprints. Mom. You should have told us sooner. Dad. You need humility, Edna. Humility. I'd eaten humility for breakfast for 22 years. It tastes like, that's nice, when you bring home a 4.0, like, at least you won't be a burden when your scholarship letter arrives. It tastes like clapping for Megan's debate trophy until your palms sting and being handed Sean's football bag like a butler. I put the diploma on the tiny kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. It looked like a ticket someone forgot to tear. The real proof was a key that left a small metallic circle imprinted in my palm when I squeezed it too tight. 3 days later, I signed the last loan document in a tidy office with a ficus that didn't know it was dying. I moved boxes with labels like kitchen, fragile, and books. Heavy, sorry, future Edna. I discovered the previous owner had considered microwaves an art form of splatter. I mowed a lawn that pretended to be bigger when you looked at it from the stoop. I bought a second-hand couch from a man named Curtis who showed me phone pictures of his cat's birthday party. I hauled a bookshelf up the stairs alone and celebrated by eating crackers on the floor like a queen in an empty castle. I did not post a tour. I did not invite ghosts. Then Caleb texted, "Tell me you're having a housewarming. Don't make me beg." Caleb had stood next to me through all the weirdness. Boxers/fire drill/we laughed until we cried weird. He once faked tears to rescue me from a date that kept saying the word synergy. He was ridiculous and good. Saturday, 6. No balloons, no chalkboards that say, home sweet home. If you bring one, I will evict myself, I wrote. Deal. I'll bring queso and one friend who won't steal forks, he wrote back. That night my mother called. I didn't answer. The voicemail was a sigh stretched into words. You didn't invite us. As if showing up to my silence counted as attendance. I went outside. The porch bulb hummed. Somewhere down the block, a sprinkler chattered. I could smell someone's dinner. Garlic, maybe, or it was the memory of it. I leaned against the railing and let the quiet rest on my shoulders. When my phone buzzed again, I expected another lecture. Instead, it was my own graduation photo, resent by Megan with a new caption. Enjoy your ego trip while it lasts. Real life is more than paper and four walls. I typed and deleted 4 times. Then I didn't reply at all. Inside, the boxes waited like patient animals. I slit one open and found my old sketchbooks. Crooked row houses, sunlight caught on glass, rough pencil lines searching for a way to hold weight and look like ease. I pressed my thumb into a page until graphite smudged. That mark felt more like me than any text thread ever had. On my way to bed, I passed the mirror. I looked like a person who had built something no one else could evaluate because they hadn't carried it. I looked like a person who could set a table and not wait for the wrong guest to arrive. I picked up my phone one last time and opened the family chat. I scrolled past the sarcasm and the absence and the tiny, performative, oops, we forgot. I scrolled to my own picture standing in front of the house with my keys and my ridiculous paint-splattered grin. I heart reacted to my photo. Then I muted the thread. Not to punish, to sleep. Because tomorrow I would buy painter's tape. Tomorrow I would learn whether the bathroom wall was actually eggshell or just tired white. Tomorrow I would lay down the first line of a border that said, here, mine, enough. And if no one clapped, the wall would still be true. The line would still hold. I would too. 3 days into owning my house, I had a running list called Edna versus the Mess. Item 1, figure out what died inside the microwave. Item 2, convince the bathroom faucet to stop crying. Item 3, find out why the bedroom light flickers only when I'm emotionally stable. By Friday night, I'd tackled at least one of them, the microwave. I wasn't sure if I exercised it or cleaned it, but either way, It stopped hissing when I closed the door. Progress. I'd planned on keeping this whole chapter quiet. No Instagram tour, no first home posts, no pastel-lettered signs that said, "Bless this mess." I didn't need that kind of irony in my life. But Caleb, my best friend and chaos incarnate, had other ideas. Caleb, you're having a housewarming. End of story. Edna. No. Caleb, I'll bring queso. Edna. When? Caleb. Saturday, 6 p.m. Be emotionally available. He knew my weaknesses, cheese and low-stakes company. By Saturday afternoon, the house looked halfway civilized. I'd found curtains that weren't shower liners, sanded the coffee table until it looked intentionally rustic, and shoved unopened boxes into the laundry room with the precision of a magician hiding evidence. I even lit a candle that smelled like ambition and lemon pledge. When people started arriving, it felt strange, like the walls had been waiting for voices that didn't carry criticism. 15 people, give or take. A few college friends, 2 coworkers from my internship, my old bookstore manager who once gave me expired peanut butter as a graduation gift and said, "Protein's protein, kid." The music came from a Bluetooth speaker that lost connection every 10 minutes. The air buzzed with laughter, cheap soda, and the faint chaos of happiness without supervision. Caleb raised his red Solo cup and declared, "To Edna, for proving you can build a home, even when no one hands you the blueprint." I laughed, embarrassed, but the sound came from somewhere deeper than humor. It came from relief. I looked around and realized I was surrounded by people who weren't obligated to clap, but did anyway. That's when my phone buzzed. 3 missed calls, Mom, Dad, Mom, again. Then a text from Megan. "Megan, why are we seeing Instagram stories of your housewarming party?" I froze. I hadn't posted anything. Caleb had. Of course. A blurry video of me holding a spatula like a microphone, yelling, "This mac and cheese is art!" followed by a group selfie in front of the fireplace. Caption, "Proud of my girl. First house, first step, big future." Apparently Megan still followed Caleb. The irony burned. Before I could even type, another message came. "Mom, you didn't invite us." "Dad, is this really how you treat family?" I locked the phone and dropped it face down on the counter. The music shifted into a soft indie song, and someone asked where I got the rug. I smiled and answered. My phone stayed face down all night. The next morning, sunlight spilled across pizza boxes and empty cups. I was still smiling when the knock came. Sharp, steady, confident, parental rhythm. I peeked through the blinds. Mom stood on the porch holding a casserole dish like it was a peace treaty. Dad beside her, pretending not to squint in judgment. Behind them, Sean in his baseball cap looking anywhere but the door. No Megan. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but my car in the driveway betrayed me. I opened the door just enough to meet their eyes. Mom. "Hi, honey. We saw the photos. Looked like a nice party." Edna. "It was." Dad. "We figured it was time we see the place." Edna. "You figured that now?" "You figured." He frowned, the way he always did when I matched his tone instead of swallowing it. Mom. "We didn't mean to miss graduation. We were going through a lot." Edna. "I texted. You replied with, 'Degrees are just paper.'" Her lips tightened. Sean suddenly found the neighbor's mailbox fascinating. "Mom, that was Megan, not me." Edna. "And Dad said, 'Don't waste money on a suit.'" Dad looked away. For once there was no counter-argument, just silence. I let it stretch, then stepped aside slightly. Edna. "You can come in. 5 minutes. I have friends stopping by soon." Lie, but effective. They entered like tourists who weren't sure if they were allowed to touch anything. Mom gasped at the new flooring I'd installed, touching it like it might apologize. Mom. "Cheesy potatoes, your favorite." Edna. "Used to be." The air felt thick. Dad walked through the living room, tapping a wall as if he'd built it. Dad. "Solid foundation." Edna. "It should be. I paid for it." He froze mid-tap. Mom tried to bridge the silence. Mom. "We're still family, Edna." Edna. "Yeah. Family who forgot to clap." The clock ticked. I smiled, polite but final. Edna. "Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I've got a full afternoon." They looked confused, like museum visitors being ushered out early. Sean finally muttered, "Sean, it's a nice house." Edna. "Thanks. Built it without cheers." I closed the door, not slammed, just closed. Behind it, I exhaled. The casserole sat untouched on the counter. I stared at it, then laughed quietly. "Family-sized," the label said. Somehow perfect. That night, I poured tea, turned on a playlist called Still Learning Peace, and sat by the window. Outside, the moonlight caught the porch railing I'd painted 2 days ago. Every brush stroke was imperfect, but mine. My phone buzzed. Another text from Megan. Megan, enjoy the honeymoon phase. Real life hits hard. I didn't reply. I just looked around at the chipped walls, the messy boxes, the faint smell of lemon cleaner and burnt pizza rolls. Yeah, real life had already hit, but this time it hit here, in a house with my name on it. And I was still standing. The casserole sat on the counter for 3 days before I threw it away. I tried reheating it once out of guilt. Cheesy potatoes and passive aggression never taste right together. Even after scrubbing the dish, the smell lingered, like nostalgia you didn't ask for. For the first time, my phone was quiet. No family chat explosions, no guilt paragraphs. It felt weirdly peaceful. Then, of course, peace didn't last. Megan struck first. Megan, so I guess you think you've made it now? Megan, a mortgage doesn't make you smart, Edna. It makes you a bank's puppet. Megan, you'll be begging for help when taxes hit. Each message landed like a pebble tossed at a brick wall. Annoying, but harmless. Still, I scrolled through them, thumb hovering. Not shock, just fatigue. The kind that comes when you finally realize the performance was never for applause. It was for power. She wasn't mad that I bought a house. She was mad that I didn't need her approval to live in it. I typed one response, deleted it. Then another, deleted that too. Instead, I snapped a quick photo, my diploma framed beside the property deed on the hallway shelf. Caption, degrees don't fix water heaters, but they pay for plumbers. I sent it, not to Megan, publicly, a statement, not a clapback. Then I muted her number. 2 days later, something arrived that I wasn't expecting, an envelope. No return address. Handwritten. The handwriting stopped me cold. It wasn't Mom's sharp script or Dad's tight caps. It was neater, softer, familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. I opened it slowly. Inside, 3 short lines in clean, deliberate ink. Edna, I know I've never said this directly, but I saw you. Every step, every fight, every silence you carried alone. You didn't imagine it. They really did choose what to see. And you still built something out of nothing. I'm proud of you. Uncle James. I stared at the paper until the words blurred. Uncle James, my dad's older brother, the man who sat in corners at family holidays, quiet as furniture, drinking black coffee and nodding like he was listening to another frequency. He never joined the teasing, never defended anyone either. Once, years ago, my laptop died a week before finals. A second-hand one appeared on my doorstep with a sticky note that said, "Try this." No signature. I'd guessed, but never confirmed. Now I knew. The letter had weight, not in paper, but in timing. Someone had been watching the same scenes I thought I'd been performing alone. And for the first time, someone said, "I saw it." That night, I found his old number in my contacts. I didn't know if it still worked. It did. 2 rings then. James. Hello? Edna. Hi, Uncle James. It's me. Silence. Then a long exhale that sounded like relief breaking through old stone. James. Well, look at that. Didn't think you'd call. Edna. You sent the letter. James. I did. He didn't fill the silence with small talk. Neither did I. We just sat in it, a quiet that felt safe this time. James. You know, your parents used to brag about you, before they realized you weren't going to turn out exactly like them. Edna. They did? James. Yeah, back when you got that scholarship. They called it luck. When it stopped being luck and started being your own work, that's when the tone changed. I swallowed hard. He continued, voice calm, almost resigned. James. They don't know how to handle pride they can't control. If they can't take credit for it, they'd rather pretend it doesn't exist. That sentence landed like truth finally sitting down in the room. Edna. That tracks. James. But I saw it. You didn't disappear, kid. They just closed their eyes. He paused, then laughed softly. James. You remind me of your grandfather. Stubborn as rust, but you build good things. I smiled, tears prickling. Edna. I guess I learned that somewhere. James. If you ever need someone who doesn't think you're a mistake, you've got my number. We talked about normal things after that. His porch that needed repainting. His neighbor's goat that kept escaping. The weather. When we hung up, the world felt a fraction lighter. I placed the letter back in its envelope and set it on my shelf next to the diploma and deed. 3 proofs of work: education, independence, recognition. Each one earned without applause. That night, as I brushed my teeth, I caught my reflection and thought, maybe invisibility wasn't the curse. Maybe it was camouflage until I was ready to stand still and be seen. My phone buzzed. Another message. This one from Ethan. Ethan, you okay? You went quiet today. Edna. Just thinking. My uncle wrote me. Ethan. Good one? Edna. Yeah, the kind that makes you rethink what silence actually means. Ethan. That's rare. Keep that. I smiled. Maybe I would. I turned off the light, crawled into bed, and let the silence settle again. This time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a thought whispered like a promise. Peace isn't the prize for forgiveness. It's the reward for letting go of the wrong audience. The peace didn't last long. In my family, quiet is just the inhale before another storm. This time, it started with a phone call from my dad. The first one since that awkward 5-minute visit. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity, stupid, stubborn curiosity, won. Dad, Edna, hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Edna, you always are, but go ahead. He cleared his throat, that corporate tone he used whenever he wanted something. Dad, your mother and I have been talking. Megan's lease is ending and she's going through a rough patch. You've got that extra bedroom, right? I blinked. Edna, you're asking me to let Megan move in? Dad, just for a few months, till she gets back on her feet. I laughed, sharp, not amused. Edna, like how you helped me during college, or graduation, or when she called my degree worthless? Silence stretched long enough to hear my neighbor's sprinkler click through a cycle. Dad, that was the past. We're trying to move forward. Edna, you mean now that she needs something? Dad, she's your sister. Family helps family. Family helps family, except when it doesn't benefit them. Edna, you didn't help me when I was working double shifts. You didn't help when my car died sophomore year. You didn't even show up when I crossed a stage you said didn't matter. He exhaled, irritation flickering like static through the line. Dad, you really want to burn bridges over this? Edna, no, I said quietly. I just built a better one that leads away from you. He didn't like that answer. He muttered something about attitude, then hung up before I could respond. I set the phone down, staring at it until the screen dimmed. For once I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I just smiled. 10 minutes later, another buzz. A text this time, from Ethan. Ethan, you okay? Edna. Family tried to rent out my guest room. Ethan. Tell them you charge emotional damages and first month's guilt in advance. I laughed out loud. Edna. Already said no. Ethan. Good. Boundaries look good on you, by the way. He was right, they did. Still, I could feel the fallout brewing. Megan didn't stay quiet for long. That evening, her name flashed across my screen with a new message. Megan. You really said no? Wow. Heartless much? Edna. Boundaries aren't heartless, Megan. Megan. You're living alone in that oversized ego trip. You owe the family some compassion. Edna. I owe rent and utilities. That's it. Then she sent a voice note, her favorite weapon. Her voice dripped honey and venom in equal parts. Eddie, you always wanted to feel superior. Admit it. You loved being the victim. Now that you have your little house, you think you're untouchable. Real life's coming, and you'll need us eventually. I didn't listen twice, deleted it, blocked her. For an hour, I wandered my quiet house, tracing the paint lines where 2 shades of beige met unevenly. Every imperfection was mine. Honest, unedited, earned. It hit me then. I'd spent my whole life waiting for permission to protect myself. And now that I had it, I wasn't giving it back. The next day, I got a call from my Uncle James again. James. So, they asked, didn't they? Edna. How did you know? James. They did the same thing to me 20 years ago. When your father's business tanked, I had a spare room. Said no. He hasn't forgiven me since. Edna. Then why reach out to me? James. Because you said no and didn't apologize for it. That's rare in this family. I laughed softly. Edna. He said I'm burning bridges. James. Let them burn. Some bridges lead straight back to the swamp. That line stayed with me long after we hung up. Later that night, I scrolled through social media and saw something new. Megan's post. A photo of her suitcase on a curb. Caption. Some people are too selfish to remember blood ties. But I'll be fine. I always land on my feet. The comments were filled with sympathetic emojis and side-eyed questions. I didn't respond. I didn't need to defend myself in a public trial where the jury was already biased. Instead, I set my phone down and grabbed a paint roller. If she was painting herself as the victim, I could at least paint my living room sage mist. Each stroke across the wall felt like an exhale. When I was done, I stood in the middle of the room, paint splattered, tired, and free. The next morning, my mom texted, "Mom, you made your father very upset. Can't you be the bigger person for once?" Edna, I already was, for 22 years. I muted the chat again. Outside, the sunrise washed the sky in pale gold. Inside, the walls gleamed faintly green, still drying, still new. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small for taking up space. I didn't know it yet, but that no had drawn the final line they would test. And the next time they crossed it, it wouldn't be with a casserole. A week passed without another word from them. It was the kind of quiet that pretended to be peace, but hummed like static underneath. I'd learned by now, my family's silence never meant surrender. It meant they were reloading. I kept busy, painted the hallway, replaced the leaky faucet in the bathroom, after watching 7 YouTube tutorials and nearly flooding the floor twice. Even started a little herb garden by the window, though every basil leaf looked like it was regretting life choices. Ethan came over that weekend, toolbox in hand, pretending to fix my door just to make sure I wasn't alone. He stayed for coffee and asked gently, "Ethan, still no word?" Edna. Just Mom's guilt texts. I muted the chat again. Ethan. Good. Muting is self-care. Edna. She says I'm cold. Ethan. Cold is better than burned. I smiled at that. He wasn't dramatic, but sometimes his words stuck. Then Sunday morning came, humid and bright, and with it, the knock. Not sharp this time, but cautious. Through the glass, I saw him, Uncle James, holding a cardboard box and a thermos of coffee. Edna, you're braver than they are. James. Bravery's just patience with caffeine. He stepped inside, looking around my freshly painted living room. His eyes softened when he saw the green walls. James, you did this yourself? Edna, every uneven inch. James, it's good. Imperfect, but honest. I like that. He set the box down. Inside were old drafting tools, wooden rulers, mechanical pencils, a scale model of a bridge half finished. James, these were your grandfather's. He'd want you to have them. My throat tightened. Edna, you kept these all these years? James, didn't feel right giving them to your dad. He saw blueprints as bills, not as art. We sat for a while, drinking coffee in the half-silent room. Then he said what I'd known was coming. James, they're planning to visit again, to talk. Edna, let me guess. Not an apology, James. More like a rewrite. He sighed. James, Edna, you need to prepare yourself. They'll twist every missing detail until it sounds like they were saving you from yourself. Edna, I'm ready. And I was. They came that afternoon. My parents first, then Sean trailing behind like moral support no one asked for. Mom had that brittle smile people wear to funerals. Dad looked like he'd rather be negotiating alone than emotions. Mom, we thought we'd drop by, clear the air. Edna, the air's fine, I just repainted it. She frowned. Dad cleared his throat. Dad, Megan told us what happened. You didn't have to humiliate her online. Edna, you mean when she posted about me being selfish? Dad, she's emotional. You could have ignored it. Edna, I did. That shut him up for half a second. Mom, this isn't who you are, Edna. You used to be so kind. Edna, kindness isn't letting people walk through your house with muddy shoes anymore. Her lip trembled. The practice kind of hurt. Mom, we're family. Don't you want to fix this? Edna, fix what? The fact that I stopped asking for scraps? Dad sighed like a man burdened by logic. Dad, we didn't come to argue. We came to remind you that shutting us out won't make you happy. Edna, neither did letting you in. The room went still. Behind them, the front door creaked open. Uncle James leaned casually on the frame, coffee thermos in hand. James, she's not shutting you out. She's finally drawing the line. My parents turned, startled. Dad, you've been talking to her? James. Someone had to. Mom stiffened. Mom, you always take her side. James. I take the side of whoever stops pretending silence is love. No one spoke after that. The air buzzed with everything unsaid. Years of favoritism, mockery, the unspoken rule that Megan shone and I stayed small. Finally, I broke it. Edna. Here's how this goes. If you ever want to visit again, you call first. You respect this house. You respect me. And you leave Megan's drama at the door. Mom blinked. Mom, are you giving us rules? Edna. Boundaries. Healthy people have them. Dad's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. Maybe because he saw it. The steadiness that used to make him uneasy. The kind that didn't need permission. James. She's not asking for distance, she's defining peace. After a long silence, Dad nodded once, curtly. Mom murmured something about dinner. Sometime soon. Sean gave me a quick nod. Not quite apology, but recognition. When the door closed behind them, Uncle James exhaled. James, you handled that better than I ever did. Edna, I've had practice. He smiled, proud in that quiet way of his. James, they'll rewrite the story, you know. Edna, then I'll build the fence higher. We both laughed, but mine carried a tremor, not fear, just release. That night, I walked the perimeter of my tiny yard. The grass was patchy, the paint still drying on the porch railing, but it was mine. Every inch earned, every boundary chosen. And as the sun slipped behind the fence I built myself, I realized, fences don't just keep people out. Sometimes they keep the peace in. The next morning, I woke to sunlight spilling through the blinds and the faint smell of coffee. Uncle James had left early, but not before leaving a sticky note on the kitchen counter that said, "Proud of you, kid. Keep building." He'd even fixed the squeaky back door before leaving. The man couldn't sit still if something needed mending. The house was still. Not lonely, just mine. For the first time, that word didn't feel defensive. It felt earned. I sat at the table, mug in hand, staring at the little things that had changed without me noticing. The basil plant by the window had sprouted a tiny new leaf. The faint green paint on the walls looked softer in daylight. Even the silence sounded different. Not waiting for an argument, not bracing for a guilt text, just humming quietly, like a steady heart. My phone buzzed once. A new message. Megan. I almost ignored it, but curiosity still had a bad habit of surviving boundaries. Megan. Dad says you embarrassed everyone yesterday. Congrats. You finally turned the family against you completely. Megan. Hope it's worth it. I stared at the screen, felt the old ache try to return, that knee-jerk need to defend, to explain, to fix. But it didn't last. I simply hit block again, this time for good. Then another text came in, but from someone else. Ethan. Ethan. Morning, homeowner. Did your family drama implode yet? Edna. Pretty much. They held a silent funeral for my boundaries. Ethan. Good. I'll bring flowers. Also, got time next weekend? Thought we could build that planter box you wanted. Edna. You mean the one I said I could handle myself? Ethan. Yeah, but I'll pretend you need my help. Edna. Deal. I smiled. Sometimes love sounded like power tools and quiet respect. That evening, I checked my mailbox, half expecting another passive-aggressive card or maybe another letter from Uncle James. Inside was a small padded envelope. No return name, just block handwriting that said, "For your next project." Inside were a few old drafting pencils, freshly sharpened, and a single folded note. Keep creating. The house was just your foundation. J. I held the pencils in my hand for a long while, the metal cool against my skin. For once, the weight I carried wasn't history, it was legacy. Days turned into a rhythm. Work, fix things, paint another room. Caleb stopped by one night with a six-pack and said, "Caleb, so this is what peace looks like. Weird. No yelling, no casseroles." Edna. Don't jinx it. He laughed and handed me one of the beers. Caleb, you know, I think people mistake silence for loneliness. But this, he gestured around the room, this looks like freedom. He was right. Later, after he left, I stood by the window watching the streetlights flicker on, one by one. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to scare me. I'd grown up in a house where quiet meant tension, where someone was always rehearsing the next guilt trip. Now it meant safety. My phone buzzed again. Another text, but this one from Mom. A single line. Mom, I hope you're happy, Edna. I typed back, I am. Then, for the first time in my life, I hit send without hesitation. Weeks passed. The family chat went silent permanently. I deleted it one morning while making coffee, and nothing inside me resisted. I started sketching again. Blueprints for small dream projects. Not for clients, not for anyone's approval, just mine. The living room began to fill with rolled up papers, coffee rings, and streaks of graphite dust that made my hands look alive. One evening, as I stood on the porch watching the last bit of sunset slip over the fence, I thought about everything that had happened. Graduation, silence, casseroles, arguments, boundaries, letters. It all led here, to this small house with imperfect paint and steady walls. No audience, no apologies, just me. The quiet around me wasn't an absence anymore. It was proof that peace doesn't arrive when people understand you. It arrives when you stop needing them to. Inside, my playlist hummed softly, the same one I'd played that first night I moved in. I set my mug down on the windowsill and whispered, half to the air, half to the house. We made it. The walls didn't answer. They didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, the silence wasn't punishment. It was home.